What are you messing with, Bert? What happened?
Can't hear you, John. Neither one of us can hear you.
My bad. See, I was saying my button mashing is off today. Normally I have my buttons all lined up and ready to go, but anyway, so I guess they couldn't hear any of the intro. We are the Political Free Agents. This is our Sunday episode. This is not how we normally start off, but yeah, that was the worst intro I've ever had on the show. So let's go only onward and upward from here. What's going on, fellas?
It's lovely, man. It's absolutely lovely. Getting ready to just getting in from a little bit of softball practice, headed home, getting ready to relax on the rest of this Sunday and cook some dinner tonight, watch some Yellowstone, call it quits.
Watch some Yellowstone.
That's my show.
Nice. What's going on, Mike?
Oh, nothing much, man. I'm about to go after the podcast. I'm about to go enjoy the Texas heat on the river. Go fish for some catfish with the kids.
Nice. Good stuff, man. Yeah, it's always a good day. We celebrated our 11th anniversary yesterday, and so we were down in Galveston. And so I was just like, my wife loves sunsets. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take her down. We can't go do like the whole restaurant celebrate sort of stuff. So I was like, we'll just go down to Galveston, catch a sunset. And so we get down there, and dude, Galveston was packed. I mean, you would have swore that there was nothing going on in the country right now. I mean, it was massively packed. I mean, the beach all the way down, I guess that's what, 62nd Street or whatever, all the way down to the East Beach, packed. And the Pleasure Pier was packed. The restaurants, everything. I mean, it was like, what? There's no parking all the way down the seawall. It was massively packed, and not very many masks either. And I was like, yeah, no, we're not going over here. We're not hanging in Galveston today. So we went to one of my fishing spots where it has a nice view of the sunset, and just sat out and chilled and talked and whatever. But I was kind of shocked. I didn't really expect it to be so dense, just with people moving around and then, enjoying the beach, enjoying the water. Now, on the beach, there were like, where you have like your little gazebo or whatever set up, they were generally spread out. But, other than that, walking down the sidewalk, all that, like everybody was just right next to each other. I was like, ooh, quite interesting. All right. So last episode, we talked about Congress and them fighting over how much to give and to whom to give it to and all that sort of stuff. Well, they didn't come up with a plan. They ended up just saying, nope, we disagree. And so that nothing happened. And so then Trump came out with 4 executive orders, basically to address the situation. These are just the titles of each one of them here. So there's a memorandum on continued student loan payment relief during the COVID-19 pandemic, executive order on fighting the spread of COVID-19 by providing assistance to renters and homeowners, memorandum on deferring payroll tax obligations in light of the ongoing COVID-19 disaster, and memorandum on authorizing the Other Needs Assistance Program for major disaster declarations related to coronavirus disease 2019. What do you guys think about this?
Take it away, Mike.
These bundles. Well, numbers, Mike. What are we looking at numbers wise here?
As far as what?
Well, so the numbers that they were arguing about were 1 trillion versus 3.4 trillion.
Well, what is there really to say? I mean, we're currently at the point where Congress is arguing over how many trillions of dollars to throw at this in any one bill, right? So,
Right.
I mean, the difference between 1 trillion and 3.4, that's a big difference. $2.4 trillion is a lot of money. I mean,
Yep.
a lot. That's a lot of money. So the
Yeah.
fact that the gap is that wide should tell you something, that there are some serious things that the Democrats want to throw money at versus what the Republicans are willing to throw money at. And
Right. And for clarity, for those that don't know, the 3.4 trillion is what the Democrats wanted, is what Mike's saying. And the 1 trillion is what the Republicans wanted.
right.
And the Dems came down to 2 trillion, but then we're still operating on a difference of double. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's classic negotiation skills, right?
Hey, I always tell people, start high.
Up here.
You start high, and then you're like, you know what?
You
I'll
start
come down.
so high that there's no way that somebody's going to say yes. So they
That's exactly correct.
Hey, that's how I used to do my parents. I hope my mom doesn't listen to this episode, but I used to always do like, hey, Mom, I need $20 to go to the basketball game. And she'd be like, $20? No, here's this 10. All I wanted was 5. I learned that early, just like inherently, like if I ask for 5, I'm not getting 5. So I'm going to ask for something way more and hope I can get what I want.
Why don't you play that clip that I sent you
Yeah.
Amy Klobuchar on CNBC, and we can kind of dive into some of the numbers.
Yeah, let's cue that up real quick. Yeah, so this is Senator Amy Klobuchar on why Democrats won't pass a skinnier stimulus bill. So there's two sides of that coin of, the Republicans aren't negotiating versus the Democrats aren't negotiating. And so this is Amy basically giving her thoughts on why the Democrats won't come up with a small
Why don't the Democrats, and maybe I'm wrong here, try to do a skinnier deal, if you will, get something across the finish line now? I know that there's a larger effort at play, and I understand the reasons for wanting that, but I also recognize the hardship that's out there across the country.
I think we agree on those facts. But when you look at the numbers, we did one big package at the beginning. That was important. But remember, we were in an emergency. We know a lot more about what's happening with the economy right now. And what we know is that the annualized GDP reduction, and you know this, Andrew, going to be 33% below what it was. That is not something where you say, let's get a little skinny Band-Aid and put it on it. There's no way that's what we need to do. What we need to do is make sure we're focused on some of the areas where employees don't have jobs and where businesses are going completely under. We need to make sure.
So just everybody keep this in mind. They're calling a $1 trillion bill skinny. So just remember that for some perspective.
Bro, it is skinny. It should have been $3 trillion.
Oh yeah, well let's make it 10 trillion. I mean,
Chris over here with the shovel.
But that's what I'm getting at, though, is that it's imaginary numbers any way you look at it. Like once we crossed the $1 trillion mark and figured that it was okay to keep adding, the Rubicon's done. It's crossed.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, remember 2008. What was it? That $700 billion for TARP.
Exactly.
That was considered just insane.
Oh yeah, that was the worst thing that could have ever happened. Insane.
And now it's like, now they've kind of crossed that mental threshold of now it's like, okay, are we gonna go 2 trillion? Is it gonna be 5 trillion? Is it gonna be 3 trillion? Like these numbers are just so imaginary at this point. So I just wanted to pause that real quick because the whole skinny verbiage is just hilarious to me that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Dollars.
Nah, for real. That's massive. It's a massive amount of money. And I think we lose track of what that actually is. Like how many zeros $1 trillion is. But they play with this money. They play with those numbers, a lot. Before I hit play again on this, so what they were looking at, this is the Democrats' version. Initially, I believe this is exactly what passed the House, right, Mike? This is the House bill,
Right.
basically. So phase 1, 2, 3, and 3.5.
Yeah. Call it the Heroes Act.
Yeah. And so,
Bro, you gotta be one hell of a hero to throw $3.4 trillion at a problem. I mean, that takes a lot of courage.
they had their like, and this is, I think the Democrats are terrible at naming. I think they are. I think the Republicans definitely do a better job of like naming and marketing on that front. But they said something like it's the Heroes Act because of the people that are involved, or the heroes of today or something. I forget, but
Anything that they call something, just think the opposite of it. Patriot Act, National Defense Authorization Act, Heroes Act, CARES Act. It's like, it's the complete opposite of the names that they come up with these things. It's hilarious. Whoever's in charge of marketing these things is brilliant.
The leverage our
Yeah.
futures act.
So yeah, that would have been much
yeah,
more.
can't be too accurate there. That's a little too on the nose, Chris. Hollywood
Bro.
wouldn't buy that.
Bro, they just don't bro, like they just don't even care anymore, bro. That's why I'm saying, I mean, at the point, you're having to bail states out, at the point there's shortages like all the way around, bro, just dump money into it.
This is the 5 generations from now in debt act, because I mean, you're talking about because you got to remember, like, all this money that they're printing, it's all new debt. So I mean,
toss it on the pile.
Yeah, just toss it on the pile. I mean, this is like great grandchildren type debt that they're printing.
Well, so here's the thing about that, like that I think, and this is where I think we as a public fail. Like let's just look at the numbers in this graphic here. 8.3 billion for expanded number of tests, vaccine research funding, and assisted state and local efforts. What does that even mean? And I understand this is the news just kind of summarizing, but expanded number of tests, like that should be a number. How much of the test? How many tests are we going to get from this 8.3 billion, which, mind you, is a massive amount of money. 8.3 billion. Vaccine research funding, that might as well be a slush fund. I mean,
when has anybody ever gotten on TV and broken down what's the per cost for one coronavirus test? Right? Like what is that? What are the materials needed? How, like, where is this stuff resourced? How is it distributed? What is the per cost, the unit cost per test? And how can you get that cost down? I mean, and then what kind of money do we have to allocate towards that? It's funny to me that 5 months into this thing, they are still trying to figure out the testing process.
Well, look at the number 1 and number 2 in phase 1 and 2, the first bullet point, expanded number of tests, and then phase 2 is free virus testing. So if we're paying for the test in phase 1, what are we paying for in phase 2 exactly for the virus testing? Like if we're paying for those,
fund money.
So that's what I mean. Like it's just numbers, and that's 105 billion. Like it's numbers that are just thrown around.
Well, they're going to that money.
Here's a number for you guys. The average U.S. income as of 2018 was $61,937. That was the average U.S. income. That translates into each person owing $67,000 a piece if you were going to wipe out the national debt.
So never happens.
So basically, everyone in this country's future is leveraged.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is,
I mean, if you listen to Bernie said, just go ahead and just take away four billionaires' money. Did y'all see that one?
Oh yeah, the billionaire tax that he's talking about.
Yeah, he's like, we just need to do this billionaire tax, and we need to take away, I think it's like 48 billion from Bezos alone. I was like, what?
That's nothing. That's That's a drop.
Yeah. His wife took him for more than that.
But there's no way we should be touching their money.
I mean,
Not when we're doing stuff like this.
you could take away. You could take away all of the wealth from the top, however many billionaires, in this country, and you probably wouldn't even come close to the amount of money that.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
One that they want to spend in this one, and the one that they passed in the CARES Act. I mean,
You'd still be probably $15 trillion short.
Yeah.
You're not even going to touch it. So here are the numbers, Mike. Bezos 114 billion, Gates 106, Buffett 80 billion, and Zuckerberg 69 billion. So you haven't even reached 500 billion. So that's the top four. And if you keep going down, obviously the numbers keep going down. You'd have to wipe every billionaire out. And this is just in the US. You have to wipe every billionaire out to even come close to the 1 trillion the Republicans wanted to spend here. Not even talking about the, what was it, 2.4, 2.8 that they spent the first time?
2.2, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2-something trillion, plus you tack on this 1 trillion or whatever it's going to cost. We could wipe away all their money and nothing would happen there.
Nope.
We still owe money. Like it's insane to think about that. All the money that you think of all these billionaires having, you could wipe all that away and we'd still not be able to pay for what they've tacked on already and what they're about to pay on.
Which makes it pointless to try to take their money anyway, because it does nothing, correct?
That's
right. And now Bernie's point, if I recall correctly, what was Bernie's point? I actually posted about it and got interesting responses from my liberal friends, which was kind of expected, but I'm definitely staunchly against taking money from people. But Bernie was basically wanting that money to be able to go fix like some issues with the people. So it wasn't necessarily like take their money for the paycheck protection program sort of thing. But still.
Peter Schiff makes this point all the time. He's like, government has screwed things up so bad already. What's the point in giving them more money? They're just going to screw things up even more. Like throwing money at the problem hasn't worked yet in however many decades when it comes to all the problems that they seem to want to like fix. They just keep coming to ask for more and more money over the years and throw more and more money at these problems, and the problems just seem to get worse, right? So I don't know. I mean,
okay, so here's what Bernie's was the Make Billionaires Pay Act, and it's a one-time 60%
Bro,
tax
that's what it was called.
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with Bernie Sanders?
That was literally what it's called, Make Billionaires Pay Act.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a one-time 60% tax on money made from March 18th, 2020 to January 1st, 2021.
Yeah, because the billionaires have increased their wealth by, I think by over $24 billion or something like that. Like probably more than that since coronavirus happened. So
$731 billion is what the tax bill would total up to.
Okay. Yeah, my number is probably super small. So
Bezos will pay 42.8 billion. Elon Musk would have to pay 27.5 billion. Zuckerberg 22.8, and the Walton family would pay 12.9 billion dollars. Can you imagine? Like, obviously, you don't write a physical check for that, but can you imagine like writing that check? And is the government just taking that 13 billion?
But the thing about it though is that, I mean, they're not even holding real liquid assets though. It's all perceived value based on the company that they built. So
they have to sell a certain amount of their stock or whatever just to get that money to pay. So you're talking about devaluing the shit.
Bro, do you realize how insane that even sounds?
And so the point of the money was to pay the tax bills for basically healthcare for all for a year. Essentially, is what it will boil down to.
1 year.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
And so this is Bernie's words. He said, the legislation I'm introducing today will tax the obscene wealth, right there, obscene wealth gains billionaires have made during this extraordinary crisis to guarantee healthcare as a right to all for an entire year. At a time of enormous economic pain and suffering, we have a fundamental choice to make. We can continue to allow the very rich to get much richer while everyone else gets poorer and poorer, or we can tax the winnings a handful of billionaires made during the pandemic to improve the health and well-being of tens of millions of Americans. In my view, it is time for the Senate to act on behalf of the working class who are hurting like they never hurt before, not the billionaire class who are doing phenomenally well and have never had it so good. So, I mean, all right, that's why I always say the left is the heart, the right is the brain, right? And you need both, right? You need heart and brain. But this is like bleeding heart. Like this is, I get it, and I'm all for helping people. But I think when you start confiscating wealth, like we were talking in the pre-show, Mike, that opens up the door for whenever something
John,
else happens. What do? They say, yo, you know what? Let's go back to the billionaires and let's go ahead and, you know, wring that towel out a little bit more. And you can't unring that bell once you do that.
That's not even confiscating wealth. That's specifically targeting individuals based off of what sounds like a vendetta. Like your bill is called Making Billionaires Pay, which is insane in theory. You know what I'm saying?
I told you you're terrible at naming.
I mean, what if someone made a bill that said make Black people pay? People would have an issue with that, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying, though. You can't have something that specifically targeted and it not look like a vendetta. It's insane.
But here's the rub. Here's the rub is that there's a legit vendetta to be had because the system is set up in such a way that makes a very small amount of people rich and create a massive gap between the middle class
100%
and the lower class. And so the vendetta is real, and what he's just tapping, his language just taps into the emotion behind how everybody's experiencing that gap widening more and more, because like that this system naturally progresses into in a way where those billionaires are going to get rich and they're going to get richer.
Absolutely.
And
now
so they think that the problem is they think the solution is to siphon as much money as they can away as that gap continues to grow, but it doesn't solve the structural issue of the gap of what causes the gap to widen in the first place. They just seem to want to just pull money away and re-divert it, but that doesn't actually solve anything. That's the problem. But the vendetta is real, and it's a legit vendetta to have because the system.
But we're talking about two completely different conversations, though. I'm 100% with you on that. I'm 1,000% with you on that because, you know, you get to the point where you have enough wealth to where you can lobby things that are completely in your favor and tilt the scale, right? Like you're using that wealth to make it unfair for everyone else under that in that 99% basically. So I 100%, I get it. I agree with you, but man, I just can't see that the way going about it though. There's just no way.
It's not. It's not because it's a practice. Once you end up doing it to billionaires or millionaires, I mean, it's just like anything else when it comes to the government. Once you open that Pandora's box, they're gonna do it to whoever they want.
They'll do it to anybody they want, and that's my problem with it. Is that people just think, yeah, this is a solution. Let's have the government take wealth. Mind you, more than likely that wealth has already been taxed. So let's just have them take that, even though we've already taxed it at a high amount anyway. let's have them take it, and then they'll fix these issues. And I've stood by this for the longest, that if you want billionaires to fix something, give them an incentive to fix it, right? Like if they give, $1 billion to whatever this case may be, they get this kind of tax write-off or something, or whatever the case. I don't know. Find some incentive to get the altruism out of them, as opposed to saying, we're just going to take it. Like, because I just think that mindset, that thinking is just a problem.
But I think that's also the reason why we're here, is that, bro, you shouldn't have to motivate anybody with that amount of money to do or help out the right cause and thing.
Right. And but that's the thing, like they do help out. Well, no, I can't say all of them, but they do, because that that's tax write-offs, right? So even if it's not because they love people, they're gonna spend money just to try to get tax write-offs.
Absolutely.
So
here's the other thing too, though. You can't lump all billionaires in the same class.
exactly.
Like, just because you make billions of dollars doesn't mean you're one type of person, or the same type of person as another billionaire. And there are plenty of billionaires that are doing great things, doing things that benefit society, and are actually like to moving people, moving things forward. But there's a lot of billionaires out there that you could definitely argue are not. So
you take the CEO of Chobani, the food company, Hamdi, I think it's Yulu Kaya or something like that. Anyway, Chobani, I think, ended up going public or whatever, and he ended up basically like giving his employees ownership in the company, and like giving them extra stock and all this sort of stuff, like stuff he didn't have to do. And I'm not talking about like the executives. I'm talking about down the line, secretary, janitor. Like he just laced everybody up and put them in a position to where they would be able to benefit. Cause he was like, look, dude, like basically in my words, look, man, I'm already rich, right? Like me taking a bigger piece of this pie is not going to really move the needle in that way. And he just really looked out for his folks. So I don't hate the billionaire class. I'm not mad at them,
But that's what Hillcorp Oil and Gas does. That's why so many people want to work there. I mean, my dad took advantage of some insane bonuses when he worked there. But and it's everyone from the janitor all the way up gets it. So yeah, if you tier wealth that way and everyone wins, 100%, you're not going to have any complaints. But when you flow everything to the top, naturally people are going to be pissed off, because it's like that. What was that show, that the one where they made like the owners or the CEOs of companies go work? With, you ever seen that? They made Undercover Boss. And some of them had no idea that their workers' situations were what they were. And I mean, that's that's just it. Like, that's the thing. You look at, I mean, John, I know you've seen it. Mike, I know you've seen it. But you look at some of these people that are like, once they get to the point to where they get at a certain level of management, they have meetings every single day, all day, for hours and hours and hours and hours. And it's like, there's only so much stuff you can meet about before it just becomes cumbersome, and you're not solving any legitimate issues because you don't know what's going on underneath you. And I think shows like that kind of prove that, is if it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And then you get there and you realize, damn, people are barely surviving.
Shoot, there was one I watched. He was working there and found out that one of the ladies there was homeless.
Yeah.
Like she was working a full-time job, but she was homeless. Like she just couldn't afford to pay for rent and stuff like that. And so she was like having to travel, on the subway, like a long amount of time, like, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes to get to work and take her son to school. But they were staying in a shelter because she just couldn't afford it. And like, he was completely heartbroken. He was like, how in the world is our company set up in a way that we have homeless employees? And so I always thought the show was great. I'm too much of a sap now. I cry too easy. I can't watch it, bro. I can't watch it. Be too emotional. Be ready to go hug a pillow at night.
I absolutely get it.
I used to laugh at my mom back in the day. We used to make fun of her.
I always wonder how much of that's scripted, but
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they, scripted some, but we used to laugh at my mom back in the day, man, because she would cry at the drop of a hat. And so we used to always like take tissue boxes and just kind of like slide it over there to her when we watch the show. And then I remember when I first started crying at stuff, I was like, is this what was going on with mama? Like I was just a big sap, man. I think it happened after I had kids. I just
screw your whole head up.
I just messed all that up. All right, so all of this stuff, like let's kind of bring it back a little bit. Like all of this stuff from the Democrats is not happening, right? They're trying to push 3.4, Republicans pushing 1. Democrats said, okay, we'll meet in the middle, we'll go to 2, and Republicans like, no. So they basically got nothing done. So then Trump comes in with the pen and says, here's 4 executive orders on these things. So let's first, CG, let's talk about what happens in this process from here on out, and then let's look at the individual executive orders.
So, I mean, basically, I believe they passed this EO with the expectation that they're going to get sued because Trump himself cannot allocate funding. But, when we talked about it the other day as a whole political prop, you would have to think that the White House probably never wanted to compromise on anything anyway. This is probably the outcome that they wanted because now they get to quote unquote look like heroes. So they passed this thing knowing that they're probably going to get sued. I would imagine that it's probably going to get bogged down. It doesn't sound like this is going to go into effect immediately from what I can tell, unless I'm wrong. So, I mean, what are we really accomplishing here? Once you break down the individual mandates, like, well, the federal government's only going to make up a certain amount. States are going to make up a certain amount of money, for unemployment. I mean, this thing has gotten so convoluted that I'm wondering exactly what have we done here? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so then I think that's a good segue into discussing the specifics of them and that impact. So starting out, the first one was the memorandum on continued student loan payment relief during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so this one basically, get past this, see, that's what I hate about these things is they end up going through, it's like a campaign speech. But basically it's going to be where you can continue to make payments if you want, but up until the end of the year, payments are suspended for student loans. And my guess is that's only federal student loans, not any other student loans. They don't provide a number in terms of what this would be. It's not like this is going to cost the government X trillion dollars in loss of money until the end of the year. But the funniest part was in Trump's speech. Trump basically told him, "Yeah, we're going to look at doing that again if I'm president, after this year." So he kind of dangled that carrot, like, "Look, I'll give this to you guys again, if I get reelected." But in terms of this one, I think it's, relatively innocuous. It's not relieving any debt. They're not like saying we're going to wipe away student debt. They're just saying, don't pay us until the end of the year, sort of thing. What do you guys think about this one?
I mean, those payments have to be made to somebody. I mean, that money got borrowed. And so those payments have to be made. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you I don't know how you defer those payments and whoever it's owed to on the back end doesn't get paid. I mean, how does the government, does the government just make that payment for you to whoever you owe that loan to, and then you just pay it back, on the back end? I just don't know how all that works. I mean, when you take out a loan and it's a government guaranteed loan, that money gets paid to somebody, and you got to pay that loan back.
Yeah, so it's basically a deferment, essentially. So it's the let's see the language here. The Secretary of Education shall take action pursuant to the applicable law to effectuate appropriate waivers of and modifications to the requirements and conditions of economic hardship, deferments described in sections, blah, 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 and provide such deferments to borrowers as necessary to continue the temporary cessation of payments and the waiver of all interest on student loans held by the Department of Education until December 31st, 2020. So again, the specific language of held by the Department of Education leads me to believe that if you have some random provider, that you owe your loans to, Sally Mae or somebody, that you're not getting a relief here. But I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
As much as I hear this conversation, and all this stuff playing out, it's so mentally exhausting to realize that, 6 months from now, we're going to be talking about the exact same things. I mean, all they're doing is arguing over money, how to spend the money. And then 6 months later, we're going to be arguing over the exact same things. I mean,
5 months ago, we said that.
None of this stuff is
and here we go.
None of this stuff is going to fix anything. I mean, it's not. Like, nothing is getting fixed. They're just throwing money at this thing left and right. Yes, throw some money at some student loans for a few months. Sure, throw some money at state budgets that are in shortfall right now. Sure, a few months from now, you're going to be arguing over how many more billions or trillions of dollars to throw at it. Like, nobody's fixing anything. Nobody's fixing anything. So it's just like, on one hand, if you're an American at this point, you have got. I mean, I saw some survey info that, like, Americans' confidence in the government right now is so low. It's like under 10% or like 15%, something like that. Some crazy low number. I mean, I don't know how you can have confidence in any kind of government entity to solve any kind of problem at this point in what's going on right now. So it's like, why? I mean, it's just like, why even talk about this stuff on some level? Like, we're just it's like Groundhog's Day, trying to keep up with all this crap that they're slushing around every 3 months or whatever. Just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not being extremely hopeful or positive, but it's just like, I mean, I can't. I have to think that a lot of people are feeling the same way. You know what I mean? You turn your TV
absolutely,
on, and all you do is you hear Democrats and Republicans fighting over, this and that, and how many trillions to spend here, and, well, I want to spend, 500 billion here. Well, and it's like, it's a shit show every day. It's a shit show, and now it's bleeding into everybody's personal lives, because kids can't go to school, businesses are closing, people can't make their rent, people are being evicted left and right, and even with all of that going on, they still can't come to an agreement on anything.
Yep. So that's a good segue there, is that the next one was about providing assistance to renters and homeowners. And the language of these is just so hilarious to me, the way that, they write these. And I'm sure it's not just them, going in and saying, let's go ahead and lay out the facts there. They throw stuff in like, my administration has taken bold steps to help renters and homeowners. So CG, this one is up your alley with your history and the mortgage and loan industry in general. And so basically, FHA loans are basically, they're going to have a moratorium on evictions and on payments for FHA loans. How much does that actually, how far does that reach, right? Like, I know everybody's not on an FHA loan, so how much does that really help in terms of blocking foreclosures and an eviction moratorium on single family mortgages insured by the Federal Housing Administration? Because initially I thought this was like mortgages, like if you have a mortgage in general, everybody basically, this would impact them. But if it's only FHA, that's not going to cover everybody, right?
So I'm looking at it right now because I was curious. It's changed a bit, but so FHA loans actually make up 1/5 of all home purchases. I mean, you do the math. I'd imagine that's probably quite a bit of people. And so you can actually qualify for an FHA loan with only 3.5% down. And then what happens is the government tiers it. So that dollar figure was, I want to say it was 417,000. They may have changed it a little bit. I want to say that was the cap though, was 417. I know it was in the
meaning the
Texas.
mortgage can't be over 417.
Yeah, meaning they will not finance anything over that, which is a lot. You still have to come with your 3.5% down. And then what they have on there is what's called MIP, which is basically mortgage insurance protection. And that has no benefit value to you whatsoever. So it's basically saying Mike buys a house from John. John's credit may be 620, but you want to sell the house to him because Mike can come up with the down payment and you have a good employment history, right? So you come up with it, but you also put an MIP on there, which is basically a foreplacement on the loan that essentially says, if John defaults on there, you are protected. The government is essentially covering that loan if it defaults. So the bank, whoever finances it, which in this case is the government, is essentially financing it. So they're not losing any money, so to speak, right? They have an insurance policy on it. So essentially, I don't know what the ins and outs of what the program is, but what it sounds like is, perhaps they're delaying that default on the FHA loan. So let's say someone can't make their payments or whatnot, or is it a full forbearance? What does this actually say, John?
Here, let me actually share this window real quick.
I'm looking
take a look
right
at
now.
it. I can put it in the chat as well.
You guys heard about JP Morgan and all these banks tightening up their lending standards too, right?
I mean, that's kind of exactly what happened in 2008, though. I'll tell you a story.
Talking about right
and this
now,
is
like they're
yeah.
like now they're changing. You have to have like a 700 credit score now. I think you got to put like at least 10% down.
That's what happened. That's what happened in 08. So that's what I was getting at. I'll never forget this. And like, when I was doing mortgages, I didn't realize exactly what type of decisions, the magnitude of it. I mean, they're paying you so much money to make mortgages, man. You're working from home, you're churning and burning. But when the market fell through in 2008, what ended up happening is lenders started to scramble. And they basically started saying, well, because specific loans in the markets are defaulting, adjustable rate mortgages, no income, no asset, verification, things like those, where essentially they were putting buyers into houses that they may not have actually known that they qualified. They qualified on credit only. But, what they were doing was they started doing away with programs. So I had this guy that lived in Colorado and he was moving out to Florida. And the only reason I always remember this is because he worked for EA Sports, the video game company. And he was buying this house out in Florida. He was set to close on it in 72 hours. He was moving his family in a U-Haul and he was driving across country. Well, when the market fell through the mortgage program that he qualified on went away. So there was no grandfather in, there was nothing that was retroactive. Once the markets panicked and they decided that they would not buy or insure those type of loans in any sort of tranche or anything like that, they just did away with them all at once. I had to call this guy, and he was driving across the country, and basically tell him, I know you sold your house in Colorado. I know you're going to Florida, but the loan program you qualified on, it no longer exists. Period. It's gone. So he, in real time, I had to call him and tell him that he was about 6 hours from Florida, man, and there's no backup plan. So he ended up having to actually get a hotel with his wife, and they extended stay there for about a month to try to come up with something else, man. And
Holy cow.
yeah, that was a real situation that happened. Julie knows the story because I came home, and it bothered me so much. I lost sleep about it for weeks because, I mean, you can't plan for that when you're in a profession, right? You tell someone, and he did. He had a legitimate loan approval. He was moving across country. And when the markets started to get real erratic and drop in 2008, his loan program went away like that, and it was gone. And I wasn't the only one that made that phone call. There were, tons of mortgage loan officers that had to make that phone call because we had qualified multiple people. So, I mean, what they're doing now is they're essentially trying to play it safe and say, you know what, let's change our guidelines before all of these defaults and stuff start to happen. But you know what, Mike, on the flip side of that, bro, that should tell you what's coming because they see it and they know that people are going to start not being able to pay those mortgages and default rates are about to start going through the roof.
They're not going to take the risk.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
That's why they're increasing their lending standards because they're not going to take the risk. Yep, because they know, like you said, they know what's coming down the pipe.
Doug was telling me about things like people buying a house when the pandemic started and closing on it. Mm-hmm. And then immediately after they closed on it, they were calling their lender and saying, we need forbearance, meaning we're not going to be able to make a payment on our loan. Maybe they lost a job, something like that. Right. So they're moving in a house, and for the first 90 days, they're not making a payment. Now, they still had to make the bulk of that payment at the end of that 90 days. But, you imagine if you're a lender, you're looking at that and saying, nah, we're not taking that risk again. I mean, someone's basically moving in a house and getting 90 days free on us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's quite interesting, man.
Yeah. So it's going to get, I mean, and Mike, bro, this ain't nothing that should come as a surprise. I know it doesn't come as a surprise to us, which is the reason why we had Doug and those guys on, because we all knew what was coming. You could see it. I mean, you can't have that many people lose jobs and there be no standing legitimate bailout plan to help them and expect them to be able to stay current on homes and rental properties and things. It's like realistically you can't logically make that make sense.
Well, remember we said that we wouldn't be anywhere near this kind of situation if people had 6 months of savings, and every small to medium business had 6 months of savings. I mean, at the point where that happens, it wouldn't take arguing over trillions and trillions of dollars to figure out, how to give people $600 or $200 a month to make ends meet for like a few months.
That's right.
So, like, this whole system is all jacked up from the way people think about money, save money, and plan for the future, all the way to the way the whole money system in the first place works. So this thing's got so many problems built into it that you really can't fix it. This is, I've said this before on different podcasts. Like there really is no fixing what's broken. The whole thing is going to come crashing down. Right now, they're just trying to plug all these holes that keep popping up here and there. They're trying to plug it with more and more money and more debt, and the holes just keep more and more holes just keep popping up, and they're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
This is why I posted this graphic let me share this real quick. I posted this graphic on Facebook yesterday. So I checked the political cartoons at the end of the week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And so, the whole rising tides lifts all boats sort of thing. And so my comment here was, join them by force, like join the 1% by force. They're not going to let you change the system from the outside. Don't let the rising tides slide by you. You won't rise. Well, I said but if you don't have a boat, figuratively speaking, of course, but basically get into the game, so even if you do have a boat, you got to understand they're going to do whatever they can to continue growing their wealth. So if you can't beat the system from the outside, join them. Join them and change it from the inside. Do whatever you can from the inside, or just take your wealth and just start helping other people. Like there's no way to, in my opinion, is like just sitting back and saying, yeah, we need the billionaires and stuff to do things. Like it's not really going to change anything, right?
Figure out how to transfer your wealth out of this system that's currently imploding before everybody's eyes. You know what I mean? This is
So episodes 80 and 81, everybody needs to go back and listen to or watch.
Gold,
without a shadow of a doubt.
Bitcoin.
All right, so let's coming up on the hour. Let's go ahead and jump through these other ones here. So the one that I found interesting was the tax deferment, the payroll tax. Trump came out and said that everybody wanted that. The Republicans came out and were like, no, we didn't. Democrats were like, no, we didn't. Nobody wanted that one. But Trump did, and he's been trying to push this since the beginning. And so the interesting part in this text is it's deferring certain payroll tax obligations. So it's not deferring all payroll tax. But the key word there is deferring. And so he said the EO says the deferral shall be made available with respect to any employee, the amount of whose wages or compensation as applicable payable during any biweekly period generally is less than $4,000 calculated on a pre-tax basis, or the equivalent amount with respect to other pay periods. So essentially on a biweekly basis, monthly, if you're making less than $4,000 or $8,000 monthly, but $4,000 biweekly, which puts you at $96,000. So you're less than the $100,000 mark. They'll defer those tax obligations, and that's key.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah, but it's a deferment. Really? It's not. Not.
Yeah, deferment doesn't really do anything for you. I mean,
you still have to pay it.
Yes.
I mean, I guess it does. I guess it does in the short term, kind of.
It provides some relief.
Help you out, but at the same time, I mean, if you're still making that money, then you should still be able to pay your bills if that money's still coming in.
Right. So
that payroll money isn't going to change anything in the sense that, you haven't really lost any income if you're still making the income that you're going to get taxed on in the first place. So it shouldn't change a whole lot. You still have a job, or that revenue is still coming in. So yep. I don't really see how that's.
So this is as soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's not for the people. Now, I would enjoy it if it was actually wiping it away, but deferring is not going to matter. I'm not going to stop paying it, but I would enjoy it because for my employees, I don't have to pay thousands of dollars in taxes to match what they have to pay in taxes. So as a business owner, if my employee has to pay $500 in taxes, my business has to pay $500 in taxes. So I basically will be able to save $500 from a business perspective and keep that in my bank account or the business's bank account. But being that it's a deferment, I'm not going to just let that $500 pile up and say, oh, I'll pay that at the end of the year when they actually want it. No, I'm just going to go ahead and pay it. If I can afford to have the employee, I can afford to pay it. And so I'm just going to pay it. Now for the individual, if they're making $4,000 a check and they're depending on what tax bracket they're rolling at, but I believe it would be the 23% tax bracket, that's about $900 extra in their pocket a month. So yeah, it's a lot of money. but I think largely you're still missing, like if you're on unemployment, you don't get this benefit.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not really helping them. If you're completely unemployed and off unemployment, that's not helping you really at all. And that's based on 96 grand. If you're making something less than that, you may keep a few $100s here or there, which can be significant. But it's not going to take it out of you owing it. Come tax time, you probably end up getting a, there's like, yeah, you get 5,000 back in taxes, but we're going to take back 4,800 because remember that deferment.
Yeah.
So basically, Caesar's going to get what Caesar's, expecting at the end of the day. So I thought that one was interesting. Anyway, you guys have any other thoughts on that particular payroll tax?
No.
Right. Nah, that's it. Last one. Last one was the memorandum on authorizing the other needs assistance program for major disaster declarations related to the coronavirus disease. Now, I have no idea what they're really saying here. I'll bring up the text though. So if we get down to providing disaster relief funds, so basically I did this back in March, et cetera. And so basically all states have activated their emergency operations center and are working to fight the spread of the virus. I declared a major disaster on April 18th, try to get past the fluff. All right, so I am directing up to $44 billion from the DRF, the Disaster Relief Fund, at these statutorily mandated 75% federal cost share be made available for lost wages, assistance to eligible claimants to supplement state expenditures in providing these payments. At least 25 billion of total DRF balances will be set aside to support ongoing disaster response and recovery efforts and potential 2020 major disaster costs. And so I believe this essentially is, this is largely what was the big contention, because this is the unemployment money that was lost essentially. So this is the $200 versus $600. And Trump basically landed right in the middle of like, all right, $400, which it kind of makes you wonder like why Congress couldn't just say, all right, let's just split 200, 600, 400. But this one, is wrapped up in some of the others, but the key is $300 is a federal contribution. And the extra money was coming from the states. So Mike, what is the implication of this portion?
Well, I was just about to say when you said, it's funny that they couldn't just meet in the middle. It's because you don't really get to say you won if you compromise. These guys are all about making it seem like their side won.
Well, I think one of the things that Mitch McConnell said at the beginning of the pandemic, point blank, was that they weren't interested in giving Democrats any policy wins that they wouldn't have had otherwise, without COVID. So, I mean, it was a throwaway comment. No one has ever really called him on it, but it's not by accident. That's for sure.
Yeah, and both parties do that. So you'll see the same. You'll see the same thing if Joe Biden gets into.
Of course.
Of course. Republicans will do everything that they can to block anything that he wants to do. Good, bad,
even if it is good for the country. He could have the exact perfect solution and they won't let it. And same thing with Trump. Trump could have a perfect solution and the Democrats are going to be like, oh, absolutely not.
Right.
They're going to try to get their piece in so they can say, hey, people, look what we did for you.
This is exactly why term limits are probably one of the most essential things that need to happen when it comes to people in Congress. It's like these people can't stay. These people should not be able to stay in Congress for 2-3 decades, screwing things up. I mean, I can't see how any of these people should be in office for more than 2 term limits, and that's it. Go away, go do something else, because they have no incentive to fix anything. All they have an incentive to do is
Stay in power.
stay in power, act like they won, and appeal to whatever base that they have when it comes down to election time. That's it. That's all these. Not every single one of them is like that, but by and large, the majority are, because that's how
a good enough of them are like that.
Especially the leadership.
I was about to say, and especially the loudest voices, which is going to be the leadership, and those hot dogs trying to come up in the ranks.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like we're going to be having these kind of arguments from here until something like that happens. There's got to be some serious structural changes that happen. Term limits, I think, are one of them. But.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And I think this particular executive order is just another one of those things on the pile, that as CG said at the beginning, like, it's going to be litigated. So it may not even happen. But Chris, you had mentioned something in our chat where you were saying that this is what they actually wanted. So it comes out as a Republican only win from a talking point perspective.
I mean, anybody can see that. The fact that we're even here right now, the fact that they issued an executive order knowing that it was probably going to be a lawsuit tells you everything you need to know. Period.
Absolutely. And they know, even Republicans came out after. Some of them came out, a few of them, and were like, yeah, no, Congress sets budget. And so Mike and I were talking in the pre-show and was like, look, they want to open up this Pandora's box. They know what's going to happen the next time. It ain't no fun when the rabbit has a gun. So when Democrats get in office, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think if, let's say, this precedent is set where Trump gets to set budget by executive order? What do you think, the next Bernie Sanders, because obviously I believe this is his last run for president, but what do you think AOC, let's say, in 7 years, whenever she's eligible, whatever, what do you think she does with an executive order? And what do you think the Republican response is to that executive order when she tries to set the budget? It's going to be doom and gloom. No way. It's unconstitutional. We can't have it, so I don't know. I don't think they really want to leave this door open. Like Trump can peddle this as a campaign speech and look, I did this and blah, blah, blah. And the Democrats fought against me, but
they're perfectly fine with doing it while they hold the keys and then arguing about it, that how could you let this happen whenever the other team is holding the keys, because they know that eventually they'll get the keys back and get to do it again. Yep. So it's all theater at that point when they argue about it. The only people that you should believe are the ones that are criticizing their own party whenever their party's the one trying to pull those even then it might just be lip service. Some of those people like Ted Cruz, I think it's mostly just lip service when it comes to him doing certain things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some legit ones out there, Rand Paul and a couple other ones.
Yeah, and Rand Paul just took the Republicans to task on this whole concept, and he said Republicans owe Obama an apology because for 8 years they cried about him, his use of the budget, and now look at how much they're spending, and they're just tossing money on the pile, and so they should apologize because they're not fiscally conservative in that way, and something to that effect. But I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, like those sort of individuals, like those are the people that you have to look for, and not pay attention to those that are just writing for party, like Pelosi and Schumer. Cruz and Gates and those cats, they're riding hard for party no matter what, and so you got to watch out for those. But anyway, any closing thoughts on all this?
It's political theater, man. I mean, Mike will tell you that, but it's political theater. These folks, they don't actually give a damn about helping anyone immediately right now. They're looking at November and realizing that it's closing. And like I said, this has been the weirdest election season I think I've ever seen in my life, because I mean, what are we, 3 months out right now? And it feels like nothing is going on. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to commercials. I haven't seen who's doing what. You know, it's chaos. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Normally by now we would already have, some talk about debates. We know who Biden's VP pick was. Like everything would be lined up. We'd already have had the conventions. Like, we're in August. So now is the time where we get ready for debates and all that. And it's just not here. So
I agree.
Mike, closing thoughts?
Gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Those are my closing thoughts.
Go get it, baby. Episode 80. Episode 80 was a great episode. Mike broke down a lot of those aspects, how to get in the game, all of that good stuff. So definitely go check that episode out. My closing thoughts, I say, hey, get in the game. Like, they're not going to let you in the game. They're not going to let you change the system that easily. So get in the game by force and take it by force. So we are the Political Free Agents. You can join us here every Sunday, 2 p.m., Wednesday, 7 p.m. Catch us at politicalfreeagents.com and also at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. On the website, click on the YouTube tab, go to it, hit subscribe, like the channel. That way you get notified whenever we go live. You can catch us. We're actually about to do some interesting things coming up. We'll release that information here soon, but we're going to start providing a little bit more video content for you guys. So looking forward to that. But we are the political free agents, and we're out. Later.